Cybersecurity Today is brought to you by the book Elisa, A Tale of Quantum Kisses, a science fiction adventure romance set in the very near future and one that may get you thinking about what the future brings. The Kindle edition is in pre-release now, and the paperback sales will start on Friday, December the 13th. Fans of the show who have pre-release orders and want an early review copy can contact me at editorial@technewsday.ca, or you can leave a message at elisabook.com. Chinese hackers exploit U.S. telecom networks in what a U.S. senator is calling the biggest hack in history. Hardware upgrades are increasingly tied to enhanced security, and the U.S. Department of Defense tackles deepfakes. This is Cybersecurity Today. I'm your host, Jim Love. The United States is grappling with one of the most severe cyber attacks in its history. Chinese state-sponsored hackers known as Salt Typhoon have infiltrated the networks of major U.S. telecom providers like AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. The intrusion has allowed attackers to monitor calls, emails, and even sensitive law enforcement systems, underscoring the critical need for robust encryption. One U.S. senator described this breach as the largest telecommunications hack in U.S. history. The attackers have gained unprecedented access, even potentially intercepting real-time communications of high-profile figures, certainly in the campaigns of Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris, and maybe of them as well. Removing the attackers from the phone system is a monumental challenge and may require the replacement of a substantial amount of outdated infrastructure. Salt Typhoon's methods involved sophisticated techniques like compromising edge devices and exploiting interconnectivity between carriers. While T-Mobile claims they successfully thwarted the attempts in days, their CISO in an interview claimed it was one of the most clever attacks he had ever seen in his career. If T-Mobile is correct, they are extremely lucky. Reports are that the other networks remain compromised. But given that T-Mobile has been breached something like 7 times since 2018 and has taken some heavy fines in the process, you could take this as lessons learned, or as I did, with a grain of salt. The breach has reignited the debate over encryption and seen what can only be described as a 180-degree turn from some of the agencies in the U.S. U.S. officials and agencies like the FBI, once staunch opponents of encryption and demanders of backdoor access, are now urging individuals and businesses to adopt end-to-end encryption for communications. Further, they are recommending avoiding traditional telecom systems which are vulnerable to interception, and using encrypted messaging apps like Signal to ensure that only intended recipients can access the content. As people turn to alternatives to encrypt their data, they will need to exercise real care in the selection. For example, a story from yesterday noted that Apple's recent adoption of RCS messaging has introduced a serious security gap that's only now getting widespread attention. When you message within ecosystems, iPhone to iPhone or Android to Android, you're protected by encryption. But cross-platform messaging remains vulnerable, with no encryption in sight. And while governments have advocated for backdoors under the guise of national security in the past, these backdoors have created the vulnerabilities that sophisticated attackers like Salt Typhoon have exploited. In fact, many of the vulnerabilities that these hackers have taken advantage of are exactly the entry points that law enforcement has demanded and used. And as the result of a lack of strong, unbroken encryption, sensitive data, including national security information, potentially remains at risk. The push for stronger cybersecurity is putting a focus on hardware upgrades. Two major tech giants, Microsoft and Google, are making significant moves that highlight the growing importance of hardware in securing devices. Microsoft recently doubled down on its requirements for TPM 2.0, or the Trusted Platform Module, for systems running Windows 11. TPM 2.0 is a dedicated security chip that protects sensitive data like encryption keys. Microsoft describes this as a non-negotiable requirement to combat modern cyber threats. With Windows 10 support ending in late 2025, many users would need to upgrade their hardware to meet these security standards. The question is, will Microsoft be able to enforce this non-negotiable issue? Recently, we've been hearing of some relaxation of the hardware requirements for Windows 11, given its glacially slow rate of adoption. So although Microsoft claims this provides better protection for identity, data, and the system itself, over 60% of Windows users worldwide are still relying on Windows 10. Meanwhile, Google is focusing on mobile security and hardware upgrades. Starting May 2025, its enhanced Play Integrity API will require Android apps to verify hardware-backed security signals, such as whether the device has received a recent security update. This change primarily impacts devices running older versions of Android. Google aims to close vulnerabilities exploited by malicious apps, but the move also pressures millions of users to upgrade their phones. For many, banking and enterprise apps in particular, the stricter standards will soon make outdated devices unusable for sensitive tasks. It's no secret that companies and people are holding back on hardware upgrades, perhaps because of budget, perhaps waiting for something really great to make them upgrade. But possibly by tying new hardware and software to increase security, hardware providers may be seeking to make upgrading a security issue. And while there's no doubt that these changes enhance protection, they also present a tough choice for users: upgrade or face increased risks. An article in the MIT Technology Review says that the U.S. Department of Defense is ramping up its efforts to combat deepfakes, investing $2.4 million over 2 years in a cutting-edge detection technology from a company called Hive AI. This marks the first such contract for the Defense Innovation Unit, which focuses on fast-tracking tech adoption in the defense sector. Hive AI's tools are designed to detect AI-generated videos, images, and audio, addressing growing concerns over the use of deepfakes in disinformation campaigns and fraud. Captain Anthony Bustamante, a project manager with the Defense Innovation Unit, called the work crucial for maintaining an information advantage against synthetic media threats. Hive's technology identifies patterns in AI-generated content that are invisible to the human eye. CEO Kevin Guo describes the fight against deepfakes as the evolution of cyber warfare. The startup constantly updates its tools to keep pace with advances in generative AI models, which have made creating realistic deepfakes easier than ever. While experts acknowledge Hive's technology is one of the most advanced commercially available, they caution it's not foolproof, something we've heard time and time again in dealing with software that claims to detect AI usage in text documents. But in this case, researchers have shown that adversaries can alter images to bypass detection, and nation-state level attacks may require more specialized solutions. Still, the partnership shows there's a realization of the threat of AI-generated deepfakes in defense as well as business and civilian life, and the need for robust tools. Ben Zhao, a professor at the University of Chicago who has evaluated Hive's product independently, says, when it comes to protecting national security against sophisticated state actors, off-the-shelf products are not enough. There's very little that they can do to make themselves completely robust to unforeseen nation-state level attacks. So Hive's tools will be used offline within the Department of Defense to protect sensitive data. And beyond defense, these technologies could also help safeguard civilian institutions from disinformation and fraud. That's our show for today. Our Saturday panel is back tomorrow with a discussion on the top stories of the month. Join us if you can. You can find links and other details in our show notes at technewsday.com. Contact me at editorial@technewsday.ca. I'm your host, Jim Love. Thanks for listening.